Hello, Libertarians. Good evening, Libertarians. Welcome to Libertarians at Large. And without further ado, let me introduce our special At Large Libertarians. Valerie Sarwar coming in from New Hampshire. Eric Raudseb coming in from North Carolina. And Senator Laura Epke coming in from Nebraska. What's up, guys? How's your Liberty Week been so far?
It's been busy.
Yeah? What's going on? Is there like a presidential campaign going on? Is there elections?
Surprising you say that. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna go into the Liberty News, the Libertarian News Quiz, as we're going to start calling it. But I want to talk about a couple big things that happened in the last couple of days. One of them is Joshua Flynn, running for state rep in Chicago, was endorsed by the Chicago Tribune.
Yep.
And what was really interesting about that, right, exactly, it's pretty amazing. What was really interesting about it was not only was he endorsed by the Chicago Tribune, but the other paper, the Chicago Sun-Times, said, we're endorsing the other candidate even though Josh Flynn is the best candidate in the race.
Wow.
So it's, I mean, it's pretty astonishing that they would write it like that. But having done that, we had Josh on the candidates corner with Pat Flynn a while ago. And at the time I said to myself, man, this guy is awesome. And he has a tremendous opportunity because the person that he's running against has not had an opponent in all the time that she's held office. So here's Josh right here. And his website, for people who want to know it, is votejoshflynn.com. And he is running a great race right now in Chicago. I was wondering, when we talk about big endorsements and things that happen in the media, what do you think that is, what the effect of that is? I mean, is it worthwhile for libertarians to spend time seeking endorsements of, the big papers?
Oh, absolutely.
Free advertising, if nothing else.
I think it's absolutely worthwhile to get, if you get the big newspapers, especially, I think that's great. Now, I mean, obviously there's all these little and some big groups out there, the interest groups that are less valuable, I think. But if you can get sort of that mainstream press endorsement, that's a great feather in your cap.
Yeah. And now it's interesting because Josh has certainly had a great run, and there's enough time left in a local race that it can really make a difference. And so when we start pushing things like that out, I think, I'm talking about it right now, like I can see the comments right now. People are excited about Josh, which is a good thing. See, big news with the Tribune. It is indeed. Thank you very much, Bradley, for joining in. When we talk about stuff like that, this late a date, it's not too late for a candidate to really have a big surge. So let me ask you guys, experienced political watchers, stuff like that. Do you have any stories of candidates who surged late to make a big difference? Anything you can think of in your personal experiences? I can tell you one in my history. I'll fill so you guys can think of more. But in 2016, John Tierney, who was the 9-term congressman in Massachusetts in my district, was running, and in 2 years beforehand, he had won a squeaker of a race in which I was labeled spoiler, very exciting, but he won. And so people thought he might lose in 2016, but he was running again. He had an opponent in the primary. Nothing. That guy could not get any traction at all. And John Tierney was going to win. The guy was polling at 8% 3 weeks before the election. And then there was one story about him in the paper And people are like, oh my God, there's somebody else other than John Tierney. So all these Democrats who, were just going to go and vote, they didn't even know. They didn't know there was another candidate. And so he went from 8% 3 weeks before the election to winning the primary. And now that guy's name is Seth Moulton. He's a relatively famous congressman. He was the one who led the opposition to Nancy Pelosi being the Speaker in the House. Part of that may have had to do because John Tierney is a Democratic opponent. Nancy Pelosi's daughter was his chief of staff. So personal things.
I think there are all sorts of things that can come up at the tail end, and this may not be quite so much the case this year, just because there's so much early voting going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that in 2014, when I ran the first time, and it was a close race anyhow, but I think it got tipped when a story about my opponent landed on social media. He was a veterinarian, and supposedly he had killed a dog. And I mean, it was one of those really weird things that, I don't know how true it was, and I'm not, but it just kind of took on a life of its own in a few circles. And I think I ended up winning that race by 187 votes. So I think you could certainly argue that that could have made the difference at the tail end.
That's there's no question about it, because that's the thing about it, is that unfortunately the electorate's attention span is so incredibly short. And it brings to mind too something I've been thinking about a lot recently. So I saw that the estimate now is that 3 million votes have already been cast, and actually it was 2 million before the first debate. Is that troubling to us?
I mean, I would hope that everybody's doing their own due diligence, but are they?
I think we've been hammered over the head so totally since October of last year. If you haven't realized that the old parties are not putting up quality and it's time to go with a third option, yeah.
I have a different view on this. Okay, right. So I mean, I think that when it gets right down to it, I'm sort of old fashioned. I like the vote to take place as close to election day as possible. This year is different, but things happen at the last minute. I don't know if anybody's an old West Wing fan, that show, but there's the one that before Sam leaves, there's the congressman who dies while he's running, and he ends up winning, even though he's dead. I mean, the weird things can happen at the last minute, and there's not time to change ballots and stuff like that. So I mean, I think that rather than moving things to an August or September surprise, I like the late October surprise if we're going to have one.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because there is everything that we do in terms of campaigning and reporting and everything is based on the idea of this election, right? The debates don't happen until the end. That you have all this voting beforehand, and I certainly understand the idea of this is a great example. Jared Hall in Montana.
Oh yeah.
Where I don't remember the guy's first name, but body slammed a reporter at one of the debates. That might have changed the election results a little bit. There was who was the guy in Missouri? I can't remember, who lost to McCaskill. I can't even remember what he said. It was something really terrible though, and that happened at the very end of the election cycle, and certainly skewed things. I want everybody to be able to vote. I like the idea of a week's worth of voting, something like that. This time with the mail and all that, it's. Go ahead, Valerie.
No, I was just thinking, I wanted to say more about Joshua Flynn, but we can keep talking about voting mishaps and things if you like.
This is your guy's show. What do you want to say about Josh?
I actually had an opportunity to speak to him on the phone today, and I've never met a more ready, prepared first-time candidate in my life. he has his win number down to like the 10th of a place. He's doing another lit run in the next 25 days. He's got a van to help people get to the polls. Like he's got a team of 20 volunteers on the ground. And I'm just like, and he's doing it on like a shoestring budget too. So I was really, really impressed. I'm like, oh, I hope everybody checks him out and I hope he wins and his opponent isn't even trying.
So there you've got the website. Everybody should go there. Give some now because this last month they're going to 3 weeks or whatever it is, they're going to need some money, and with these big endorsements, those would make great mailers. You just cut those out and put them on the mailer. We did stuff like that in my campaign, and they're very effective because if you can say endorsed by, and then highlight the part that, Josh is better, or whatever, that makes that's a big deal. It could be a very simple mailer, just a big postcard, but they got to have money to do that.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing about that is that, with him being able to get money right now, the mailers, stuff like that, but he's also, what Valerie talked about, he's got that get out the vote thing organized. That's something that makes a huge difference, but also costs money. Being able to pay for somebody who can just drive people around, because you can't pay people to vote, but you can pay to get them to the voting place, and that's a big deal. Turn out the vote. Josh's opponent has never had an actual opponent in an election. Every time that she's run, first she was appointed to the race, to the position, and then every time she's run since then, she hasn't had an opponent. So he's the first person to actually run against her. It's going to be a really exciting race. And, Chicago is a town that a libertarian would make an enormous difference in. I mean, Illinois, Chicago, it's the daily machine still is in existence, but getting a libertarian elected there would be amazing.
Yeah. And this one really was like flying under the radar. And now it's like one of my favorite things to be watching right now.
Yep. I like everything about this race as well. And I think that the opportunity is there. And you're right. Great candidate, great campaign. All right. I said we'd do the news quiz first because that was the thing that Valerie enjoyed the most last time. So let me pop that up. And
I didn't even try and cheat.
That's good. That's right. You could have cheated because it technically came out on, it comes out on Friday. So it's been out for a week. But New York Times, paywall, all that stuff. So here we go. The first question was, which of the following has President Trump deducted as a business expense to reduce his tax burden, according to the New York Times investigation? Number 1, Ivanka's wedding. Number 2, a new swimming pool. Number 3, Brioni suits. Number 4, a hairstylist.
His hair.
Yeah, it's his hair.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tell me you think he's spending money on that hair.
If you only have 12 hairs, you need to take really good care of them.
And hair plugs are expensive, people.
All right. We're going to try it out. Let's take a look and see whether or not it's hairstylist. You think a hairstylist is tax deductible? You guys are right.
Yes.
Times obtained tax return data reveals that struggling property write-offs, etc. He also wrote off, $70,000 in hairstyling for television appearances.
That's a lot of hairstyling.
That is a lot of hairstyling for not so much hair. If he just gave it up and went to a wig, he'd be good to go.
Yeah.
Number 2, sports ball, the bane of all libertarians. Not me. Which team won the first championship of a major North American league in the COVID-19 era? Was it the Miami Heat, the Houston Astros, the Tampa Bay Lightning, or the Seattle Storm?
Tampa Bay won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, so Capitals fans no longer allowed on the broadcast. I'm making a new rule.
I know. I was sad about that.
The thing that I like about it as a Bruins fan is that, of course, they Jared Hall referencing the guy from North Carolina. I can't remember his name. When an expensive haircut destroyed a campaign. Who was that? He's running against Clinton.
Yeah.
Howard Dean, no.
No.
Howard Dean was the yeller.
John Edwards.
Oh,
right. Well, okay. So
that the little video thing, and
right, exactly. But also, let's remember that. Let's not let John Edwards off the hook. he also cheated on his wife while she had cancer. So,
Yes.
yeah, that guy. All right.
Yes, her leads
Wrong
to his
enough.
word.
3 out of 10. Number 3. Claire Bronfman was the first defendant to be sentenced in the NXIVM investigations. N14M. Does anybody know how that's pronounced?
Pronunciation, no.
Prosecutors say she used her family fortune to intimidate critics of the cult-like group. Oh, is that the Allison Mack sex cult thing? Wow, I didn't realize that was what it was called. All right, so which fortune is she the heir to? Claire Bronfman. Marriott Hotel and Hospitality fortune, Seagram's Liquor fortune, L'Oreal Cosmetics fortune, Levi Strauss clothing fortune.
No.
I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly certain it's Seagram's Liquor.
Anybody in the audience want to type that in? We're going to give you a second. Claire Bronfman. You guys shouldn't look it up, though. That's cheating. You think it's Seagram's.
We're libertarians, so it has to be liquor, right?
Of course, of course.
When in doubt,
It's
drink.
always a good guess. When in doubt, yeah, pick liquor. Correct.
Oh,
We're
yes.
doing so well this week.
Yeah.
All right, so Claire Bronfman, NXI. It's got to be N14M, right? I mean, it's got to be what it is. I don't know. Right, it has been an abusive cult that coerced women into sexual slavery. Pleasant story. Russians were urged to return to normal life, but President Vladimir Putin is living in a virus-free bubble. Which of the following safety measures has Mr. Putin not taken? A, he outfitted his residence with a movable tunnel that douses people in disinfectant. B, he wears rubber gloves all the time. C, he requires those who meet him face-to-face spend up to 2 weeks in quarantine first. Or D, he has not traveled abroad since January.
Okay, so I know the answer to this because I'm Estonian and my father talks about Putin on a daily basis.
Interesting.
So I do know the answer, so I will let someone else answer if they wish, or I can answer it.
Well, if I were going to guess, I would say he's not traveled abroad since January because, no. It says he's not taken. My guess would be that he doesn't have a movable tunnel that douses people in disinfectant.
I think he has that.
You think he
He
has?
does.
All right. That's crazy.
Rubber gloves. That'd be
Rubber
awkward, wouldn't it?
Right. It's got to be like the most easiast thing.
It's the rubber gloves.
Oh my God.
All right.
He has a severe latex allergy.
All right. That is good to know.
I want to see what his tunnel looks like.
Yeah.
I am turning the, thanks to the notes coming in about my mic being quiet, I'm turning it up. Yeah, so he has an intricate cocoon of social distancing, most of his meetings through video conference. His residence has been outfitted with a disinfectant tunnel. That must be ridiculous, right? He sprays you down. That's pretty crazy. All right. Number 5. President Trump announced that Amy Coney Barrett is his nominee to the Supreme Court. She chairs judicial philosophy with which former Supreme Court justice? I mean, I don't even have to give you the choice, right?
Yeah. No, we all know.
We all know Scalia.
All right. That one wasn't even hard. She clerked for Scalia from 1999
Even I knew that one.
1999. Yep. And his widow was in the audience when she was introduced. However, she did not catch COVID.
Good.
Unlike almost
She was in
everybody
the
else.
back, huh?
Well, so one of the interesting things about that is actually it's people who are just outside haven't caught COVID. It's the people who were either in the before or after party that were indoors that were the ones who've been infected. People talk about the spread, but it's not really interesting. So number 6, what have Chinese officials given to thousands of people in the country? Bewildering global experts, recalled N95 masks, toxic hand sanitizer, fraudulent at-home test kits, or unproven coronavirus vaccines.
I have to say, I know a lot of these this week, and it's kind of unusual because they talked about it on my local news because we've got UNC right here. But China is going forward with unproven coronavirus vaccines, and
Ding, 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 ding.
it's actually really scaring a lot of UNC and Duke doctors, because they're really worried about what the unknown side effects might be, or are they going to actually be close enough to a vaccine that may create a more hardened version of COVID.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because, you know, mindful of American experiments, similar, obviously, the Tuskegee experiment and a few other cases where unethical government. Did they say in the story whether or not the people know that they're unproven vaccines, or they're just being told it's a vaccine for COVID?
I mean,
it is China, so anything's not beyond belief there.
They don't get a choice.
So here's the problem. So Jared Hall points out unknown side effect might be zombies. How do
We might
libertarians
get
feel
our
about
zombie
that?
apocalypse after all.
Exactly. Right? That's a mixed feeling about it. Although I commented on this earlier, I am fed up with Walking Dead. I mean, I may have lasted longer than most people, but the bottom line for me was that they had this thing go on where they have all the zombies walk in and they're attacking the city of Alexandria, and it's like they haven't watched the last 9 seasons like I did. They have no idea how to prepare for a zombie attack. They're like, oh no, zombies! It's just so I've given up. I just thought I'd mention that on the side. All right, so it's interesting. You know, Sinovac, drug maker in Beijing, 10,000 people in the city have been injected with a COVID-19 vaccine candidate. I mean, I guess when you have 1 billion people, you're less concerned. I don't know.
Yeah, you're okay with the margin of error.
Maybe it's exactly. Maybe it's you know, what's the communism thing, right? The good of the many outweighs the good of the few.
I think that's
Charles Dickens.
No, I think that's Star Trek.
Maybe it's no. They're definitely quoting.
Oh.
Star Trek is definitely quoting.
Oh, okay.
I think that they're quoting somebody. Somebody can look that up while we go to the next one.
Spock.
Which American artist's early work were found to be copies of other artists' painting? Edward Hopper, famous for Nighthawks. I actually have a copy of it on my wall. Georgia O'Keeffe, The Flowers. Norman Rockwell, everybody knows Norman Rockwell. Or Grant Wood. Anybody have any idea on any of this?
As long as it's not Georgia O'Keeffe, I'm happy.
It can't be Norman Rockwell.
Yeah.
No, I think it is Norman Rockwell, and he made them look like pictures that looked at other paintings. That's my guess.
Interesting. All right. So our consensus guess is Norman Rockwell or not Norman Rockwell?
I don't think we have a consensus.
I don't have a consensus.
All right. So there's 4 of us and there's 4 answers. So let's do a little ranked choice voting. Okay.
In honor of Maine.
Yeah, in honor of Maine, who's going to be using ranked choice voting to vote for their presidential candidate. Let's say, I'm going to go through the names and you tell me whether or not this is your number 1 vote or not. Edward Hopper.
Seeing that he's on your wall, Dan, I will go with Edward Hopper.
Well, no, but that means that he's not. All right, that's 1 for Edward Hopper. Georgia O'Keeffe? None. Norman Rockwell?
Yes.
Grant Wood?
Yes.
All right. I'm also going to go with Grant Wood. So that gives him 2, but that's not 50%. So Georgia O'Keeffe is eliminated. However, that doesn't do us any good.
She had no votes. Yeah.
Exactly. She had no votes, and we didn't have a second place vote. All right. This doesn't work well without pre-planning. I'm just going to guess Grant Wood because he had the most. Oh, no. Edward Hopper. Oh, that's terrible.
Are you crushed, Dan?
I am crushed because Nighthawks, if I show it to you, you guys will know this picture. Hopper. All right, here it is.
Oh.
You guys have seen it before, right? Yeah, and it's a great one. I mean, there's all sorts of great things about it. And then, when you go to college, you see a version of it with James Dean and Humphrey Bogart and Marilyn Monroe. And I don't remember who's working behind the thing. But yeah, just great piece of work. I was very disappointed to learn that. But, oh well, what are you going to do?
Nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing. Everything turns out to be fake eventually, right? All right, so we got one wrong. Did I close the StreamYard window? No, I didn't. All right, good. Question number 8. Which phrase will Japan Airline retire from its in-flight announcement? Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen. Prepare for takeoff. Sit back and relax and enjoy the flight. Or optional, look, Godzilla. I love the Godzilla movies as a kid. I had to throw that in there.
I'd say ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, agree.
I would agree, ladies and gentlemen.
Indeed, Japan Airlines said it would retire the phrase ladies and gentlemen from in-flight announcement and use gender-neutral language as of October 1st. Announcement in Japanese will remain unchanged because their gender-specific greetings are not used in the first place. Intriguing. Number 9, which NFL team reported the first coronavirus outbreak of the season?
I know this.
You know it? Just say it, Val.
Minnesota Vikings.
No.
I disagree.
Yep.
So my partner is from Nashville, so I happen to know this. It's Tennessee Titans.
I 100%
Oh my gosh.
agree it is the Tennessee Titans.
It's a red state. Has to be, right?
Yep. And what's interesting about it though is that the Titans were playing the Vikings at the time, and no Vikings were infected.
Well, one guy was infected, but he wasn't because they tested him 3 times. Like, maybe we should test everyone 3 times.
Well, so that's definitely true.
That's why I thought that, because I didn't know it came from the other team.
One of the really fascinating things about this is that the teams that are having the positive tests right now, they've all been practicing together. This really close proximity, and yet it's not like everybody's infected or anything like that. It just shows you how hard transmission is in general, but also gives you a feeling. You look at the president's infection, and I think there's 14 cases out of it now, out of the president. It's obviously going to be a lot more because they're just starting to see the I shouldn't laugh at it because it's terrible, right? But the president went to an event in New Jersey, the day that he found out that he had COVID, right? Unmasked. Pretty crazy.
Yeah. Chris Christie.
Exactly right, and that's the thing about it is like I wonder what they're going to do for Chris Christie because he's super high risk. Yeah. Bruce wants us to know the Commission on Presidential Debates just canceled the NFL. That's pretty funny, Bruce. All right, last one. Which animal received an award for life-saving bravery and devotion to duty? Was it a cat, a dolphin, a rat, or a horse? Now, I do know, actually, I was going to say dolphin, but I know the Navy has sea lions and seals trained for ship protection. They actually swim around and prevent people from swimming up and placing mines on boats when they're in port. In fact, some were deployed to the Gulf during the first Desert Storm campaign.
Yeah, but this can't be the United States. This has to be another nation, because otherwise, if we gave a dolphin an award for life-saving bravery, I mean, every single news station would have covered that. So this has got to be something international. And just because it's absolutely ludicrous, I'm going to say a rat.
Yep, I'm going to say a rat too.
Sure.
All right. The consensus in rat? Correct. An African giant pounced. Oh, here he is.
He's got a medal. He's got a medal on.
They gave him a little medal. He is apparently searches for landmines.
What country is this from?
This is from Africa. I didn't say what country. Cambodia.
Cambodia.
African giant pounced landmine. But he's been searching for landmines in Cambodia, which...
I don't want to sound horrible, but are we sure it's the same rat?
It's a good point. I mean, he's got some big feet there.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I just watched The Five Bloods. I don't know if you guys have seen that or not. But if you haven't, highly recommend it. Superb movie about a bunch of African American Vietnam vets who go back now, sort of the 40th, 50th anniversary of their tour. And then all sorts of good stuff. Good story happens. Chadwick Boseman is in it, one of his earlier films, and he's superb. Just defy bloods. It's on Netflix. Can't recommend it highly enough. And it deals a little bit with Cambodia, as most of Vietnam does. All right. So we cranked through the news quiz. We're going to go back to talking some more libertarian things. Did you guys watch any of the presidential debate last week?
Yes, I did.
Eric, I can when you put your head down like that, I can see where you've been pulling your hair out because of the presidential debate.
Exactly.
Look, see me too. Yeah, it was pretty painful. I did not make it all the way through. I mean, aside from the childishness of it and the unwillingness to answer any questions, those guys are just idiots. Right? I mean, wasn't it painful for that? I mean, at one point in time, I thought to myself, I'm embarrassed. I am embarrassed for the country.
I actually had, I posted on Facebook immediately after that I had to get up twice during the debates because I just could not handle the insanity any longer. So yeah, no, it was bad.
I was in DC.
Right.
And watched with our national chair and Ethan and Andy Craig was there as well. And, so we sat over at Joe and Ethan's house and watched it. And I think the only way you could survive it is by watching it with somebody else. If you're trying to if I tried to watch it alone, I would have turned it off really early.
Right.
But this way, you can kind of make fun of it and laugh at it and, bemoan together.
Yeah. So actually, Jared makes a great point that Joe won that debate. And it's true, especially in this fashion, because Joe's website started getting 11,000 hits a second after the debate.
Yeah.
It was so incredibly busy. And, this will all come out in the FEC report. In that 24-hour period following the debate, with the website under tremendous pressure, the campaign raised $70,000.
Yep.
And so there are people who are really desperate for another choice right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, desperate for another choice right now, who knows what happens 27 minutes from now?
27 minutes from now?
Yep. Maybe it's an hour 27.
We get done.
No, that's close. that is true. But the free and equal debate with all the candidates who don't have 50 state ballot access will occur. And it's interesting because it differentiates what that 50 state ballot access means. Is that, there is a real thing. And, to that thing, let me show you guys this. I could probably take that off the shared screen. Oh, I did take it off the shared screen already. The Committee for American Debate. Committee. There it is. Let me share you guys this one. So, the Committee for American Debate, and their URL is americandebatecommittee.com. And they are setting up to host a debate with a very simple criteria. Every candidate, you have to be constitutionally eligible to hold the office of president and appear on all 50 states plus the District of Columbia. And they are looking to hold a debate outside of the auspices of the Commission on Presidential Debate. So, my next news quiz for you guys is, can you tell me in order all the debate news that happened today? Because it was pretty good.
Oh yeah, it was crazy today.
Okay, so here's the first thing. They said that they were going to do it virtually, right? That was early this morning.
Yep.
And Trump said that he was pulling out because there's no point to doing it virtually.
Because it's a waste of time.
Yep.
And I don't know beyond that. What else happened?
So Then the Trump campaign says that they should push the debates back to October 22nd and October 29th. So essentially pushing everything back a week. The Biden campaign said, no, we're going to do it on October 22nd. And then ABC said, we're going to hold the town hall on the 22nd in person without Donald Trump because he said he's not coming. And the CPD issued a statement that said no candidate is obligated to show up at the debate. So this sounds
Is that
like
illegal though?
well, as we've established, there is nothing that the CPD can do that would be illegal. Right? I mean, clearly, if they won't let candidates in who are on the ballot in all 50 states, you know, if they won't let Joe Jorgensen's name be included on the polls, they'll do all sorts of crazy stuff. But where it is right now, they are planning on doing the debate, the town hall style debate, with just Joe Biden and George Stephanopoulos in a room together.
Awful.
It's insane, right? And so I have to think that the president is going to want to do something else.
Oh yeah.
If only there were another presidential candidate around.
Well,
Go ahead.
I saw a tweet from Joe that said that she'd be happy to take Donald's place, and do a Joe versus Joe virtually or otherwise.
Yep. And she had actually had two. One where she said she'd be happy to do a virtual debate with Joe Biden and an in-person debate with the president.
Oh,
I
wow.
think that's a pretty good idea because they can't seem to play nicely together. You know, maybe America needs a chance to see, and obviously the CPD doesn't think that there's room on stage for three people.
Well, and this is a perfect opportunity. If Donald Trump doesn't show up, you know, obviously the debate can't happen, but that doesn't mean that Joe can't show up and have a friendly discussion with old Joe and go forward.
You know, it's not a bad idea. I mean, I would do a couple things. I think if I were on Joe Jorgensen's campaign, I think showing up there is probably a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Say, you know, we're here.
Like, hey.
Contact the campaign beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
You know, set some basic ground rules. No hair sniffing. Just, I mean, you have to say that because, and the reason why you have to say that is because what did Joe Biden say over the weekend? Oh, you guys haven't seen this one?
Oh no, I've seen it.
All right.
With
Eric,
those,
you want to tell us while we look for it?
they were 16-year-old girls, weren't they? And they were doing a dance routine.
Yeah. So I'm going to give Joe Biden a little bit of credit and say that what he wanted to say was he really enjoyed these young girls dancing for him, and he hoped that when he was running for re-election in 4 years, that they would come and dance for him again.
Yeah,
But what he said was, I hope to see you beautiful girls when you're 4 years older. I mean, just unbelievable. And here's the thing. I understand the comedians now who say that Joe Biden is the gift who won't stop giving because he is one gaffe after the other. I mean, I thought George Bush was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I say this as I'm a former special education teacher. You know, I understand that George Bush Jr. has dyslexia. Okay. You know, it's difficult for him to read from the teleprompter. But when he said, I understand how difficult it is for you to put food on your children. That's comedy gold. You can't beat that. You can't be mad about it. But this, I mean, considering that it's Creepy Joe, at some point in time, some staff member must have said to him, look, Joe, just don't say anything.
Don't say anything.
Don't say anything about any of the women in the audience. It's not
But
good for
my
you.
favorite all-time political gaffe to this day is Dan Quayle. I am sorry that I did not pay better attention in Latin class so I could speak with Latin Americans in their native tongue.
No, he didn't say that.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that was bad.
There is, well, when we were all in Minnesota, did you guys see any of the anti-Joe Biden commercials that Trump was running on the air? So those.
No, but I saw one here.
Oh, really? Is it
Yeah.
the one where, like, he talks about being top of his class, stuff like
No,
that?
it's like a lady driving a minivan and like some thugs smash her windows and like, this is Biden's America. And I was like, what?
Wow.
Like, I'm no fan, but that's not
That-
going to happen.
Yeah, no, that's pretty crazy, right? I mean, right. Where did everybody go? That happens. Let's see if I can find that the Joe Biden commercial. The interesting thing about it for Joe, of course, is that, you know, to a certain extent, if you look at the numbers right now, right, and we can talk about how much we believe polling. Certainly, polling was way off in 2016, right? I mean, they didn't have it right. 538, who I consider the gold standard. The nice thing is they don't predict winners. They just give a percentage chance that they think of something happening. And so they had given a 70% chance of Clinton winning in 2016. But they actually predicted the popular vote very accurately. They predicted Hillary Clinton at 48 million, which is what she got. They predicted Trump at 44 million. He got 46 million. And they predicted Gary Johnson at 5 million. He ended up at 3.5. But pretty accurate, and they were pretty close, except that in many states they were off by the margin of error. If you look at the 270 to win now map, and that I will pop up for us, it's not close. And we can talk about polling being what it is. Let me pop this up. So right now, Biden is at 290, not including any toss-up states. And this is sort of the consensus. This is what they call the consensus page. So I math nerd, I spend a little too much time digging into these things. But this is where all 9 major polls are in agreement. Where they're not in agreement, that becomes a toss-up state. But the ones where all 9 polls are in agreement, Biden's currently at 290 electoral votes, and the president is at 163. And then there's 85 that are considered toss-up. Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, Iowa, and one of the main districts.
And you notice those stripes in Nebraska.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Okay, so that's the 2nd congressional district. No, not blue.
Nope, sorry. I broke it. Hang on.
The 2nd congressional district is around Omaha, and in 2008, we divide our electoral votes like Maine, and so in 2008, we gave 1 electoral vote to Barack Obama, the rest to John McCain, I guess, and then it hasn't happened again, but they think it's in play this year. It's quite the deal. I mean, to the point where a county attorney in Douglas County, which is Omaha, switched parties from Democrat to Republican today, or yesterday, yeah. I guess. And like everybody showed up to, the governor, multiple state senators, I mean, every Republican who is anybody showed up to and then the press asked him, "Are you voting for Trump?" And he says, "Well, I already have." It's like, okay, whatever. But they have certainly, the Republicans are certainly digging in the 2nd congressional district.
Now it's interesting. So, is that congressperson a Republican or Democrat?
He's a Republican right now, but that's our one swing district that we've had in the last 25 years. It's probably been almost evenly divided. It's Don Bacon right now, but Brad Ashford was the Democrat before that. But interestingly, the Democratic Party in Nebraska has gone really radical, and they not only censured or the county attorney who switched parties, but the person who is the Democratic candidate for Congress and has not been endorsed by the previous Democratic congressman, and indeed the previous Democratic congressman endorsed the current incumbent Republican today or yesterday. So Yeah, it's a crazy place up there in Omaha.
It's interesting because to a certain extent, like I like the idea that there's a state where it's still at least conceivable that a Republican might endorse a Democrat or a Democrat might endorse a Republican. So I mean, I think Nebraska ought to be proud of that. I can't see that happening in, well, Maryland's a little bit weird where I live now, in that it's like Massachusetts, and that it's a heavily Democratic state that seems to consistently elect Republican governors, which is it's interesting. There's one of the questions on my ballot this year was the Massachusetts, the Maryland budget. The way it works is that the governor sets the budget and then sets the line items, and the legislature has to approve it or disapprove it. And they want to change the amendment, change the Constitution with an amendment to allow the legislature to change the line items in there. And I'm really torn because, on the other hand, I do think that people should control the purse. That's the way that everywhere else has done it. On the other hand, I recognize the fact that the only thing that's controlling the spending right now is the governor, because the Maryland legislature really wants to spend a lot more money, and Maryland is, to my surprise, for a state that has as much poverty as it does, because they have proximity to. Did we get past Val? We did get past Val's time. She turned into a pumpkin and disappeared. But Maryland, because of its proximity to Washington D.C., has a huge number of government employees who are all pretty wealthy, because you get pretty wealthy working for the government.
So Dan, you said you live in Maryland, so I've got a quiz question for you, seeing that you're good at quizzing us.
Bring it.
So when is the last time the Maryland legislature was in Republican control?
I'm going to guess. Obviously, there's a lot of anti-Lincoln sentiment after the war. In fact, the Maryland state anthem still talks about the tyrant Lincoln. Well, because he imprisoned them all and treated them as prisoners of war, locked them up. I'm going to guess 1960.
No, goes back further than that.
Wow, 1920.
Just a little bit further. It's I believe it's 1916 was the last time.
Wow.
That the Maryland legislature was in Republican control.
That's interesting. I think that it's not surprising to me, although it is surprising that it's that long Democrat. I mean, obviously, there's Maryland's part of the South, and the solid South being Democrat for such a long period of time. I guess that makes a little bit of sense.
It's actually the longest that any particular party has controlled a state legislature in U.S. history.
That is pretty amazing. Massachusetts, which is super blue now, but Massachusetts had a lot more Republicans in it back in the day. In fact, it's not Edward Brooks, but the last Republican senator from Massachusetts was an African-American guy who Barbara Walters just revealed in her biography that she'd had an affair with him. Racy. But that was the last Republican senator. And then Massachusetts, with the exception of Scott Brown, hasn't elected a candidate, Republican, to federal office since 1994. So that is a long, long time. And now there are no elected Republicans to federal office in anywhere in New England. The last one to lose was Bruce Poliquin in Maine, and he lost because of ranked choice voting, which I think is good. It's appropriate. I want to see that, but he had 45% on the first ballot and only 48% on the third ballot, so he lost.
Wow.
The interesting thing, too, though, about looking at where these states have been and how long they've been like this is that it talks about the opportunity for libertarian candidates. Because I think I didn't think people were ever going to be unhappier with government than they've been in 2016. But 2020 is like, hold my beer. I mean, aside from the fact, right, obviously, Eddie Van Halen dying, that's just traumatic. All the criminal justice reform that we see now that's breaking down. I mean, the fact that the guy who, excuse me, killed Eric Floyd was released on bail, the lack of charges in the Breonna Lewis killing. I mean, that was insane to me. And that what's coming out now that, the people weren't given any sort of presentation that allowed them to conclude that the presidents were available. And that's one of the problems, I think, with a grand jury, is that a grand jury, for people who don't know, there's no defense attorney there. It's only the prosecuting attorney, the district attorney, and he presents the information that he wants, and then the grand jury decides whether or not there's enough evidence to indict. Of course, the district attorney is conflicted because the district attorney works with the police officers. And so he is inclined, even if we were to say that he wasn't doing it to be part of a cover-up, he is inclined to believe the officers that he works with, shoulder to shoulder, upholding justice all the time. There is a conflict of interest with a district attorney presenting information to the grand jury about police officers that he works with. There is, and there was until not that long ago, the idea of an independent prosecutor being called for those situations. And there's also, people talk about the idea of private prosecutor, that a family could say, you know what, we want to hire a lawyer who will present the case to the grand jury. The grand jury is still public people. It shouldn't matter, right, who presents the case, because justice still takes place in the courtroom. This is just a question about whether or not there's enough evidence to have a trial.
Yeah,
Well,
I think.
Sorry, Laura, go on.
Well, no, I think one of the problems that we have when we start talking about some of these things is that every state's legal system, judicial system, is a little bit different. So in Nebraska, grand juries are used for limited purposes. Our prosecutors can file charges without a grand jury. But if they decide not to file charges, they can call for a special prosecutor who then will convene a grand jury. So this is what this county attorney up in Douglas County was dealing with. He had declined to file charges in an instance, and so when new evidence came out, he was conflicted out. So he called for a special prosecutor to be appointed, and the special prosecutor then convened the grand jury. Nebraska has limited times when grand juries are called. So the other time when grand juries are called is when somebody dies in police custody or in the custody of the state. Then it's automatic. Otherwise, most things don't get a grand jury.
Interesting. Eric, you were going to say something.
Well, I think the situation that we are facing with our legal system in the United States is going to get far worse before it gets far better. There's no consensus, and we are a politically divided nation. It's really sad that the rights of people and their protection under the judicial system is going to suffer, but I feel that it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better in this nation.
I think so too, and it's interesting because, that is, I think, one of the things that really is driving this election right now is that people feel like it's just a matter of time before the wheels of justice may turn against them.
Yeah.
The one overwhelming united feeling. There's a friend of mine, Dr. Peter Everett, who just an amazing guy, oncologist in Massachusetts, very generous. And a libertarian, of course, because I don't have it. No, I'm just kidding. But he said, one of the things that's really divided us right now is that we have no consensus. And the thing is that, especially, in media, I think I talked about this last time. When I was a kid, when I went to school in 4th grade on Thursday, everybody talked about Happy Days the night beforehand because everybody watched Happy Days because there were only 3 channels, 4 if you count PBS. Now, there's such diversity in music and in television and movie options and stuff like that none of us have a shared media experience. And Dr. Everett pointed out that the original media experience was the night sky. And we all looked up at it and we saw essentially the same thing. And that had a lot to do with this shared feeling of, being humans and the human experience, suffering it together. One of the phrases that I like to use on the campaign trail is that Republicans and Democrats will talk about, oh, we're big tent. We're a big tent Republican. I'm a big tent Democrat. But if you think that people ought to be able to look up at night and see the stars, then you're a libertarian. So, to that end, we're getting up to the end of the show. I want to thank everybody for watching LPTV, Libertarians at Large. We do this every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. There might be a move next week to 8 p.m. Eastern. Stay tuned because we want to get Joshua Smith involved. Josh Smith's out in central United States, out in Iowa, and he said that 8 might be better for him. And so 8 works for me. I don't know how you guys feel about it. Thursday night?
I'm good with it.
All right. Thursday night football doesn't start till 8:20, so I can suffer through missing that first bit of it to get other people in. Talk briefly about some of the candidates that we mentioned. We mentioned Donald Rainwater. Okay, those of you who get a chance to support the Rainwater ticket out in Indiana, just look it up. Real easy name, Donald Rainwater. Joshua Flynn in Chicago, and then the other candidate that I really want to talk about, and we're right at the end of the show, but Ricky Dale Harrington Jr. in Arkansas.
Yep.
Ricky Dale is running a two-way race between him and Tom Cotton. Yep. And, Tom Cotton is, it's funny. I meet with a group of West Point graduates here in DC that a friend of mine hooked me up with. And, if you've never hung out with Academy people before, they are bright people, really perceptive. And these are guys who, in general had voted Republican. One of them called me yesterday and he said, Dan, I just want to know a little bit more about it. Are you guys, libertarians, planning on dismantling the military in the next 2 years? I'm like, not in the next 2 years. I feel very confident about that. That's not going to happen. I gave him the Joe quote of, we want to be like Switzerland, armed to the teeth but neutral. I said, listen, we don't believe in disarming anybody, right? We want you to have as many weapons as you want to protect your house. Our country is our house. We believe in self-defense. He said, okay, well, that's good. He's like, now the other thing I have to tell you is, like, I'm a Defense Department guy, but I saw that there's a libertarian running against Tom Cotton. I'm like, there is. I'm really happy to hear that you know that. He asked me what I knew about Ricky Dale Harrington. I pointed him to the Candidates Corner show. He watched it. He came back. He's like, it's a good stuff. That sort of thing, libertarians running across the country. We have, tremendous candidates out in the Frontier Project. That's frontier.lp.org. Please check them out. And then, ideally, you guys are the next wave. The people who are watching this show, okay? Municipal elections are coming up in 2021. If you think that things can change, if you think it takes one person to do it, you're right. And you're that person. You're the person who starts the libertarian revolution at the municipal level next cycle. We have candidates running for county offices, candidates running for city offices, school board. A libertarian on the school board makes such an enormous difference. And let me give you an amazing example. Deborah Altman is an elected school official in New York City. 2 weeks ago, New York City started doing random COVID tests on children in school. And she's like, and the parents weren't being notified. She's like, that's insane. And so she went to them, one libertarian, and said, listen, okay, you want to do tests? Okay. But there are no tests that are happening on children without the parents' permission. There are no tests that are happening without, having somebody the parent approved of in the room for this test. Yeah. And sure enough, they voted on it and it passed it. Yeah. One libertarian in one position makes the world more free.
And if I can make a pitch,
please.
Not only school boards, but zoning boards or
Yeah.
zoning commissions. If you want to see affordable house prices within the United States again, if you have the compassion to make sure that people can afford housing, get on a zoning board or a planning commission tomorrow.
So I think Eric has determined our topic for next week. We're going to talk about offices that libertarians should be running for in 2021. Sound like a good one?
I like it.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. We are Libertarians at Large. We will see you here again, same bat time, same bat station. Thanks, everybody.
Maybe an hour later.
Maybe an hour later. I already forgot about it, and I just announced it. All right. Thanks. Good night, everybody.